I tried to make him into a real man and not just a policymaker.
The community is a lot broader than it is smaller.
To know that our arts organizations are really looking out for us is encouraging.
Today on Spotlight, why fostering community power starts with young children. Plus, a book about President Eisenhower written by his granddaughter. And then an exhibit exploring how artists have processed 2020. But first, drawing with Ido Rosenblit, how he creates his unique style. It's Sunday and you're watching Spotlight.
Sort of the basis of my artwork boils down to drawing. And then from that, it sort of branches out into painting, and then I do a lot of murals and also printmaking and bookmaking as well, but it's all kind of based in drawing. My work is sort of all based around kind of utilizing like a kind of cartoon vernacular images. That's sort of like the defining trope that kind of connects all my artwork together. I find that they're interesting to kind of use those images because they have an ability to create imagery that connects with the viewer instantly because they recognize that, but it's not based in reality. You're still able to invent a lot, so you kind of have the best of both worlds, I guess. So I have a wall back there that's like a wall of like most of the artists I like the most. Probably my favorite artist ever is Philip Guston. He was someone who utilized sort of cartoon imagery within his painting practice. Once I saw the kinds of things he was able to achieve with his paintings, I thought, oh wow, that's something that I could take away from and do with my work. So he's probably my biggest influence. I graduated from RISD in 2011. I ended up moving back to St. Louis. I was working like 3 jobs and, didn't have a studio, and I was trying to figure out a way to force myself to keep making art. And so I developed this idea that I would carry around a sketchbook, like a little pocket-sized sketchbook, and draw something in that sketchbook every day. That was the project, and that kind of was what helped me kind of break into the scene here and get attention for that and establish myself here. I've been increasingly doing more kind of commissioned work. It's kind of like a big part of how I make a living, is kind of like freelance illustration and also these kinds of commissioned gigs. At this point, luckily, I feel like when they approach me about something, I'm not just some unknown quantity. They kind of see that I have a certain aesthetic that they want, and so that's why they're coming to me. So I try to fit their ideas into my kind of aesthetic, trying to kind of blur the lines between a work of art that I would be making on my own versus something that I've been kind of hired to do. I think I used to care more about what the viewer thought of the work. When you're growing up, you think that like the artwork that you do will somehow like have some kind of huge impact, like they'll see the thing that I make and then the whole world will change and the world will become a bigger, brighter place. Once you kind of get over that idea, you end up just kind of making work for yourself.
Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
WePower is a systems change organization. But just what does that mean?
One of the core beliefs of WePower is that we believe power is a human right. We think everybody should have access to power so that we can design, I think, a more beautiful and equitable tomorrow for everyone throughout the St. Louis region. We look at health, justice, economic mobility, and education in the St. Louis region, and we say the systems here seem like they could be designed better, especially for those most impacted by racism and poverty.
One of the ways WePower hopes to foster community power is by focusing on early childhood education.
If we care about human dignity and we want to benefit society in a multitude of ways, then investing in quality early childhood education is a necessity.
My goal has always been to prepare my kids for their next step of their academic career. And I really know that I'm going to be their first face of learning after their parents. So I want to make sure that they have a positive ideology and a positive experience in early childhood education, so they'll take that with them throughout their whole academic career.
I've had the opportunity to work in some spaces and interact with educators who really value young children as competent and capable learners. What I've also come into contact with, however, is the realization, and it's been shown to me time and time again, that these spaces are often only available to those families who can afford to pay for them.
The St. Louis region is complex. It's full of a lot of different communities, and we have some real difficulties in a lot of spaces. And investing in early childhood education is going to allow us to move the needle in a lot of different areas to advance human dignity across our region and across our state. But there's also considerable economic benefits as well.
When you put money into early childhood education, particularly those who are the most at risk, you see a 13% return in investment for the rest of society and for those who are actually going through the quality education process. That's much better than people usually get in a mutual fund in the stock market.
To go about putting a plan into action, a diverse group of teachers, child care center directors, parents, and academics were brought together to form Tomorrow Builders, a fellowship that brainstorms, gathers information, and works to affect policy change.
I've had several conversations with educators, especially in early childhood education, about what needs to change. And to be a part of an actual group that's trying to make real change, it was really a dream. That is why I joined the Tomorrow Builders. I like what we're about. I like us talking about reimagining what our world would be like if we put more into our children.
The work that the Tomorrow Builders that we're trying to do here is to kind of increase access and opportunities for those families so they don't have to make the decision, okay, do I pay for childcare or do I buy food for my family this week?
Studies have shown that from birth to 5 years old, children are like a sponge. This is when they're learning. This is when they're exploring the world. They're setting the temperament, the social and emotional being of the individuals that they're going to be. Why not give them a great beginning? That is the urgency of it, is that these little people today are going to be young adults tomorrow.
A beautiful thing about this fellowship is that we're able to connect with other communities who are experiencing success with similar initiatives. We sent a group of people to Tulsa to speak with their key players in the early childhood system there. And from that, we're able to not only understand what went well and what worked for them, but also we're able to learn from some challenges that they're currently experiencing.
We need to understand that this is going to be a complex process and that we're going to have to move collectively over time to move the needle.
I think change is possible as long as you put the work in, and you have to value what you're trying to change. And I think that we really need to remind people how to value their children in education, especially in early childhood.
My dream for the early childhood education system in St. Louis is not only a system that meets all children where they are, but helps them see what they can become.
To learn more about WePower and how they are pushing for change in 2020, visit WePowerSTL.org.
Has your dining room become the classroom? Virtual learning is the new reality, and Educate.Today is here to help with free standards-aligned videos, lesson plans, and activity ideas in arts, humanities, social studies, STEM, and career exploration for students from elementary age through high school. It's Educate.Today.
You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike for president.
It was a job he never really wanted. General Dwight David Eisenhower seemed perfectly happy spending his golden years serving as president of Columbia University. Instead, he ended up becoming the 34th president of the United States.
The Republicans and the Democrats had no idea which political party he voted with. The truth was he hadn't voted until after he retired from the Army.
Both parties were trying to get him to run.
Yes, they were. As a matter of fact, Harry Truman volunteered twice to step down in Ike's favor if he'd run as a Democrat, which is pretty astonishing.
He was a 5-star general and a 2-term president.
You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike.
A lot of Americans liked Ike, but Susan Eisenhower loved him. Her president was also her grandfather.
That period is long gone, but I think my parents really helped us all by letting us think of him in 2 different ways. What I've done in this book is actually, for the first time in my life, bring it together. And so it was a bit of an emotional experience for me, actually, certainly by the end of the book.
Now, 60 years after he left office, Susan Eisenhower is sharing with the nation the story of one of America's most accomplished yet misunderstood presidents. Honesty, integrity, responsibility in war and in peace. I have to ask, why after 60 years did you decide to write this book? Why wait so long? Because obviously so many books have been written about his administration in the interim. Did you feel that you had something else you wanted to offer nobody else did?
Well, I think there are 2 things. I thought I had something to offer, which is a glimpse into the way Ike thought about things. Maybe that's a little presumptuous of me, but as I did the research, I was so surprised to see so many things that align with the way I was raised. And so I thought when scholars hit a brick wall and couldn't figure out why he did that, often I'd say, oh, I know. It used to be like this in our family, right? So I thought I'd add some of that, tried to make him into a real man, not just a policymaker and the rest of it. And then finally, I thought, because this book is dedicated to my strategy and leadership students at Gettysburg College, I wanted to make sure that rising generations know that we once had a very different kind of leadership in our country, and that they should expect more. They should expect more about everybody who goes into public life, and that this book is really about a different way of viewing maybe many of the same problems we have today.
And I suppose one of the advantages you had over those other biographers is that you had access to some family papers, diaries, letters, and things that they would not have had access to.
Well, it's ironic that of all people, I'm a foreign policy expert. I'd say national security is probably a better way to describe it. But I ended up being the only person who ever wrote a book about Mamie Eisenhower, and now a book about Dwight Eisenhower. So I left a lot of the really intimate family stuff for my first book called Mrs. Ike. This one is more about how Eisenhower thought through problems during his wartime leadership and during his presidential leadership. And then I've interspersed it with chapters about who he was as a person, so that I hope by the end of the book, readers will feel like they come away with knowing who he is.
Do you think he's one of the most misunderstood presidents of the modern era? I think a lot of people probably, and I suppose I'm as guilty as the next person, think of that as just sort of a quiet, peaceful time, played a lot of golf, not much was going on. Clearly that wasn't the case. I mean, he brought us NASA's, he brought us the interstate highway system, which started right here in St. Louis, so at least we remember him for that. But so much has been forgotten about that time.
I think the reason it was misunderstood is nobody understood his leadership style. It wasn't about him getting attention for himself. It was about him meeting his goals. So he worked a lot behind the scenes.
Do you think that he could win the presidency today, all things being equal?
Well, I think he could win the presidency today if the United States and our allies had just come out of an existential war. But the thing is, we're never going to have wars like that again. He was one of the very first people to understand we were never going to have a war like that again. If you are looking only among sort of an extraordinary character who might come from nowhere almost, I think it would be very hard. And I don't think that what he stood for is out of date. I just think we don't know how to do it anymore. And I hope we all take some time to realize that this country is only going to progress if we move forward together.
Well, perhaps your book will help get that word out there. It is certainly a very powerful story. Susan Eisenhower, thanks so much for the time. It was a great talk to you.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Text Susan to 31996 to watch the full interview or download our Talking with Authors podcast.
HEC Media presents Talking with Authors, the podcast. your favorite writers and genres with diverse subjects and styles, like New York Times bestselling author Brad Meltzer, crime writer Karen Slaughter, Charles Fishman, Sarah Kendzior, Judy Blume, with new podcasts dropping bi-weekly. Subscribe to Talking with Authors wherever you get your podcasts. From HEC Media, Left Bank Books, and the St. Louis County Library.
So we're here at the Foundry Arts Center to showcase our Global Impact exhibition, The Wake of COVID. This exhibition was put together quite fast, actually, and we had over 300 submissions participate in this exhibit. We wanted to ask artists, what have they been doing and making since COVID has happened at the beginning of the year? We wanted to know how isolation and quarantine has affected their work, how their perspectives have changed in the meantime. A lot of the work is focusing on the delicacy of nature, our intimacy with other people, and of course, how industrialization has made us so isolated in such a wide worldview. The Foundry put together this exhibition just so that way we could connect with the community and showcase that artists are also going through the same things that every other day people are going through. We wanted to showcase how we're not so much alone and that we're all together in a community going through this together and how we're still going through this even today. Considering that we're not out of the mud of it all yet for COVID, a lot of people, of course, have been interpreting the works that they've made in very extreme ways. A lot of people have gone back to their roots of how they started making artwork, and a lot of people have been using really unconventional materials, materials that we wouldn't necessarily use, but are a part of our everyday lives and things that we just don't think about as art, becoming art. So this exhibition actually has quite a lot of mediums, printmaking, photographs, and charcoal and paintings. Of course, we have a lot of sculptural elements, videos, and other installation works displayed in our galleries. When you visit Global Impact, we hope that you just see the value in artists at their work, and we hope that you can see that we're all just human at the end of the day, and all just trying to get through this in our own way. We're thinking that once you go through this, you'll see how people have tried to be really therapeutic in the way that they work, and have tried to just process everything that's been happening from, the housing crisis to the protests to the mask mandates and everything in between. We're hoping that whenever you come and see it, that you'll understand that the community is a lot broader than it is smaller. Foundry Arts Center will be hosting Global Impact from August 14th to September 25th of 2020. While it is up, we are having a mask mandate and holding hand sanitizer at every doorway and making sure that we keep the spread of COVID-19 down as much as possible. If you're not able to visit here in person, you can always go online to view our virtual exhibition, which will be up on August 21st.
Arts United STL later on Spotlight.
In the Amazon rainforest of southeastern Peru, Gideon Erkenswick and his team are collecting biological samples from wildlife populations of bats and primates.
Regularly collect samples, blood tissue, buccal swabs, nasal swabs, and then release animals.
Erkenswick is part of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. He's also co-founder and director of Field Projects International, a research and conservation nonprofit. Portable sequencing technology is used to screen for disease-causing viruses associated with the movement of wildlife or wildlife products.
So COVID-19 is caused by a beta coronavirus termed SARS-CoV-2. Close to the area where we suspect the outbreak took place, there's a wildlife market.
Erkenswick is a postdoctoral research associate in the lab of Dr. Jennifer Phillips, co-director of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Washington University.
SARS-CoV-2 and related viruses circulate in bats, and how it actually spilled into people, still an area of active investigation.
Phillips is co-author of a study proving the value of broadly deploying new methods, including this next generation of sequencing technology. The team is extracting viral genomes from animal samples and rapidly sequencing them on site. The researchers are hoping to create a global wildlife surveillance system to identify animal viruses that can potentially cause human diseases. They say this new system could provide early warning for the next pandemic.
Kind of harness the capacity around the world that's not being harnessed with new technologies so that we can protect the whole world.
There isn't consistent pathogen surveillance taking place in wildlife markets or in wildlife communities or in peri-domestic animals.
The goal is to broaden wildlife surveillance globally, monitor hotspots and wildlife markets, and provide analysis and data collection with higher accuracy and greater speed than the way it has been done. They say they want to go beyond a process that's been unreliable with fewer available labs and resources.
This kind of system could produce data in a matter of days or weeks, whereas, prior systems that involve moving samples around, exporting samples, storing samples, finding the right labs to test the samples, that's years, months at best, sometimes years to achieve that work.
With this new way, viral sequences can be uploaded from on-site to a central database in the cloud.
It's not about building more high-tech labs distributed around the world. Cutting-edge technology that's more affordable and more portable that you can teach people on-site to be able to use.
Collect samples and on the fly test for parasites or pathogens.
Researchers around the world could then help analyze them to identify animal viruses that may be a threat to people. Identification of pathogens would be more immediate.
We have to understand the human-wildlife interface better, so we have to make a science out of it that we don't have right now, and a science of trying to predict and understanding markers of where that risk really is.
Providing early warning for the next outbreak or pandemic so the world may be prepared.
What's out there so that should they spill, we could rapidly develop therapeutics that would encompass these other things that are in nature.
There's all sorts of natural sort of barriers when we sort of disturb those things by destroying habitat or removing animals from the wild. That's when exposure and transmission, which we never knew to occur, can take place. The world is very connected. People travel so easily now that there is virtually no place where pathogen zoonotic viral surveillance is not a concern for us all.
HEC has been bringing you positive programming and award-winning content for decades. Arts, education, culture, in-depth discussions, films, and more. All in one place, hecmedia.org.
Oh yes, it's ladies' night, and the feeling's right.
At the time, it seemed like a good idea.
Oh, what a night.
In 2019, Anita Jackson began singing for her supper full-time.
Oh, what a night.
2019 was wonderful. My estimation of what 2020 would be based on 2019. Joke!
Everything just shut down overnight for artists.
Everything shut down overnight. And it was so funny. As things were shutting down, I was saying, oh God, okay, please don't cancel that. Oh, canceled. Okay. Oh, please don't cancel that one next week. Canceled. I'm like, oh, yeah. Everyone's lives changed in an instant.
And when it became clear that the livelihoods of artists would not be coming back anytime soon, the Regional Arts Commission created a $100,000 relief fund to help struggling artists avoid becoming starving artists. But within just a few weeks, all the money had been given away. And with RAC getting its funding from taxes on hotel stays, its source of the emergency funding was gone too. And that's when the idea was born to put on a show to benefit the Artist Relief Fund, featuring mostly local performers. Produced by Opera Theater of St. Louis and the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. On May 31st, the show was live streamed on the internet and simulcast by HEC TV.
Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome to Arts United STL.
It just scored dividends well beyond what we would have imagined when we started. So a huge success.
We're off to an amazing start.
They had hoped to raise $250,000.
Come on, St. Louis, please.
By the end of the telecast, they had raised $350,000, with a few more donations coming in after the show. bringing the total amount of emergency funds distributed by RAC since the start of the pandemic to just over $500,000. Of the 800-plus artists who applied for assistance, RAC was able to fund almost 600 requests, even beyond its typical jurisdiction of St. Louis City and County.
Then he holds my hand.
Anita Jackson was one of the performers featured in the telecast and a recipient of some of the funds.
I had maybe $4 at the time I received, the gift. So, yeah, who'da thunk it?
How long will it hold you, do you think?
It's been doing pretty well so far. We're getting thin again, but it got me through a nice little hump there. So every little bit counts. Every little bit counts. Every amount counts. And it really helped at a time when I was nervous.
Applicants were given a choice of requesting $500 or $1,000. What's, I find so heartening is there was a meaningful percentage, and I don't quite know what it was, that asked for only $500 because they looked at their needs and that's what they asked for. So it made our job on that score quite easy.
The Arts United benefit was created simply to raise money for local artists.
We'll do the best we know.
But along the way, what they discovered was the fortitude of the St. Louis arts community and the importance of the arts to the larger community.
It's a very adaptive and resilient group. Their purpose of creating is not going to be dampened by any pandemic.
What did I do?
And so as we get to a place where there's more opportunity, I think we will see them flourish. It just may look different. They may be put together differently. And we'll just have to see.
It must make you feel good at least to know that people, in the midst of all this and all the troubles we all have, still care about the arts.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that they do. To know that our arts organizations are really looking out for us is really beautiful and encouraging.
We are Arts United STL, and we thank you. Thank you, St. Louis, and good night.
Next week, where you can see the most breathtaking landscapes and new technology helping racehorses. Thanks for watching Spotlight. We'll be back next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.